Exposed, 13 spine-chilling small towns in America with haunted, sinister rules you won't believe. Lydia had heard the stories. Having lived in Oakwood all her 35 years, she could feel the town's secret pulse, a sinister undercurrent lurking beneath every warm smile and friendly wave. As a single mother, she fought daily to carve out a life for her children, Zoe and Sam, within this picture-perfect facade. But when 8-year-old Tommy Adams went missing without a trace, the vibrant streets lost their familiar charm, morphing into a scene shrouded in an ominous hush. The air thickened with whispers of dread, and Lydia felt an icy finger run down her spine as she surveyed her once cozy surroundings. Days at the grocery store turned into blurred motions, stacking cans, handling customers, exchanging pleasantries with patrons who now spoke in hushed tones like they were sharing secrets about the devil himself. Lydia couldn't help eavesdropping. Phrases like the hollow ones floated past her like vaporous specters, igniting an insatiable curiosity that clawed at her insides. Each rack she stalked more felt like a veil hiding the terrifying truths bled into her mundane life. The eerie notion that happiness came with strings tied to shadows made her heart race, when her children gleefully spoke of Mr. Harris's enticing game nights full of laughter, tea, and tales spun from the fabric of fun. Lydia's stomach churned. How could they not see the glint in his smile that sent tendrils of icy fear curling around her heart? That facade, that friendly veneer, seemed more an invitation to a trap than a mere neighborly gesture. Lydia regularly watched as parents dropped off their children, dark circles under their eyes betraying sleepless nights filled with worry. "Lydia, you should join us," he often said, his tone dripping with a false charm. The invitation felt like an insistent snare, tightening with every passing moment. Then there were those vague warnings from other locals when she dared to inquire about these game nights, strained smiles, rigid shoulders whispering of fear too deep to articulate. The legend of the hollow ones haunted the air, spirits discarded by their own town, hungry for recognition and twisted in their desperation. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One fateful evening, when the sun slipped beneath the hills, casting long, eerie shadows, Lydia's sense of dread reached a fever pitch. She discovered a rotting shed at the rear of their yard, peeling paint revealing years of neglect. Inside, thickets of cobwebs weighed heavily in the stale air. As she pushed aside the disheveled clutter, a darkened passage loomed ahead. Driven by sheer instinct, she stepped into the cold dark, heart pounding, every fiber of her being screaming at her to turn back. The passage opened into a clearing, bathed in the dim glow of flickering lights. Townsfolk, their faces concealed behind grotesque masks, swayed and chanted in a language that sent shivers racing down her spine. They surrounded a fire, shadows dancing like demons that twisted and turned, embodying secrets too vile to voice. A scream echoed through the night, reaching her ears like a blade, slicing through the deception. Panic surged in her chest as she spun to return, only to collide with Mr. Harris. His maw twisted into a grinning snare, eyes reflecting the fire's glow, illuminating the darkness wrapping around her children. "Join us, Lydia," he beckoned, a predatory thrill vibrating in his tone. The chorus of chants swelled, drowning out her thoughts, her instincts. Urging her to flee, but her feet remained anchored to the soil, growing wet with the air thickened by secrecy and fear. Shadows closed in, thick and suffocating. The aura of danger tightened around them like a noose, leaving Lydia with an impossible choice. Would she entwine her family within this nightmarish veil, or tear them away from Oakwood's haunting grip? The fire crackled, its embers popping like the desperate gasps escaping Lydia's lips. She stood frozen, paralyzed by the nightmare unfolding around her. Mr. Harris took a step closer, the smell of smoke and something rotten mingling in the air between them. "You can't resist what's meant to be," he said, his voice smooth yet laced with a dark undercurrent. Lydia's breath came hard and fast. She had to think. The chants echoed, twisting and curling around her thoughts as if they were alive. The masks, the grotesque faces staring back at her were blank, void of humanity. Were they all in on it? Terror gripped her heart, and she felt the edges of panic fraying her resolve. Lydia. Sam's voice cut through the chaos, dragging her mind back. Zoe clung tightly to her brother, their wide eyes searching for comfort in their mother's face. "Mom, I'm scared," Zoe whispered, her small voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. Lydia's maternal instincts kicked in, she felt the fierce need to shield them from the darkness encroaching around them. "We need to go," she shouted, her voice cracking as she turned toward the passage through which they had come. Yet her feet felt anchored, as if something cold were wrapping around her ankles beneath the ground. The chanting intensified, becoming a chorus of malevolent whispers swirling just beyond comprehension. As she forced her legs to move, she could feel the shadows clinging to her, trying to pull her back, and dread filled her heart. Would they come too? "Run!" Lydia commanded, urgency fueling her actions as she yanked Sam's hand, but a sickening force tugged at her back. She glanced over her shoulder, and her gaze met Mr. Harris's, his grin now a leering mask of triumph. "You'll never leave. The Hollow Ones have chosen you." She stumbled backward, dragging her children with her, the panic palpable in the air. The figures began to close in, moving with a slow, unrelenting intent, their chants morphing into an ominous melody that danced on the edges of her sanity. With each word, Lydia felt her willpower slip like sand through fingers. Desperate, she turned again toward the passage, the dim glow of the exit illuminating her path. "Zoe! Sam! Come on!" Her children followed, dread mingling with their youthful spirit as they sprinted together through the dark corridor. Behind them, the growing chants transformed into a cacophony, a roar demanding her submission. Just as they burst back into the shed, the door creaked open, an icy wind sweeping past them, stealing any warmth they had left. The moon hung high, its light a ghostly beacon against the swallowed night. But their reprieve was short-lived. The shed felt eerily still, a heavy silence pressing down on them. Lydia turned and pulled the door closed tighter, breathing heavily, only to feel it shake as someone pressed against it from the other side. "Join us, join us, join us," the whispers echoed, sending chills racing up her spine. The shadows shifted, reaching toward the door like gnarled fingers trying to break through. Each beat of her heart thundered in her ears. "Mommy!" Zoe screamed, her face pale. Lydia squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, determination surging through her. They needed to escape. Her mind raced, scrambling to formulate a plan. The stories, the warnings she had ignored, had they all been preparing her for this moment? "Stay close," she urged, shoving the door with all her strength. It groaned under the pressure, the weight of unseen bodies pushing against it. They couldn't stay in this night too much longer, not with the Hollow Ones demanding their presence. Shadows danced just beyond the threshold, hungry and relentless. Her throat tightened as she felt the air grow colder, as if even the night held its breath, awaiting the outcome of her desperate fight, and then, a crash. The door buckled. The chilling voice of Mr. Harris rang out against the storm, "You can't escape your fate, Lydia." The Hollow Ones always collect in that moment. She understood one thing: they were far from safe, and time was running out. With resolve igniting in her soul, she pushed through the door and stumbled into the night, but a dark shadow swept past her, suffocating, leading them directly into the unknown. What awaited them in the open air was just the beginning of a nightmare that had no end. The darkness enveloped them like a cloak, swallowing Lydia and her children whole as they stepped into the night. The air was thick with an unnatural cold that made her bones ache. Lydia shivered, gripping Zoe's hand tighter, her heart racing like a wild animal trying to escape a trap. "Where do we go?" Sam's voice quivered just above a whisper. His eyes darted nervously around, searching for any sign of safety. Lydia felt the fear radiating from him, and it ignited a flame of urgency inside her. The shadows loomed tall and twisted. They were no longer just silhouettes but entities filled with hunger and malice. Just keep moving," she commanded, scanning the unfamiliar territory around them. Underneath the pale moonlight, her gaze fell on the old path leading deeper into the woods, a bone-chilling memory flashing through her mind, the stories of the Hollow Ones. The tales always warned against straying too far into the night, yet her only option was to flee into the very heart of the darkness. They lurched forward, sprinting down the narrow trail, but the trees closed in around them. Their branches seemed to claw at the sky, scratching the stars as if trying to extinguish the light. Lydia could hear the whispers again, seeping through the cracks of her resolve, join us Mom, I don't want to go back. I don't want them to get us." Zoe sobbed, her little legs struggling to keep up. Lydia turned to look at her daughter. "I want to let them. I promise." The urgency in her voice was a fragile shield against the encroaching dread. But deep down, she felt the weight of her own doubts creeping in. What if they couldn't escape? What if the Hollow Ones were already upon them? Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath them, a tremor that rattled the trees and swallowed their footsteps. Lydia's breath caught. "Run!" she screamed, the command ripping from her throat. Their pace quickened, barely dodging the dark slithers that began spilling from the shadows. They could see them now, grotesque forms writhing as if pulled by unseen strings, their movements jerky and unnatural. Each figure pulsed with a sickly glow, eyes fixated on them, glimmering with an insatiable hunger. Lydia's legs burned, every muscle screamed for relief, but the dread of being caught pushed her onward. She pushed aside the terrifying images of the faces she saw just moments ago, the smiling masks that promised her a fate worse than death. Sam and Zoe gasped behind her, their breath strained and panicked. "Mom, what do they want?" His question hung heavy in the air. Lydia glanced back, a thread of fear gnawed at her gut. "I don't know, but they want to take us." Just then, the chanting rose, a thunderous roar piercing through the suffocating silence. "The Hollow Ones are coming." Heart pounding, she turned to see the glimmer of the moonlight, reflecting off something in the distance, a small clearing. Hope ignited in her, and she adjusted her course towards it. The shadows danced in delight, as if sensing her fragile hope, and Lydia knew they were close. With every ounce of strength left, she pushed her children forward. But before they could reach the clearing, the shadows surged, spilling into their path like an inky tide. Foul, rancid breath circulates around her, and Lydia felt a cold grip clutch at her heart. "Mommy!" Zoe screamed again as they were engulfed in a choking fog, dimming the world around them. Lydia stumbled, her feet slipping on unseen muck. The whispers grew louder, mingling with the new sound of laughter, mocking, unbearably close. Panic rose within her like bile. "We have to fight. We want to let them take us." Yet, doubt curled around her thoughts. Would fighting only make it worse? She tightened her grip on Zoe and Sam, the warmth of their small hands grounding her, anchoring her in the nightmare. But as the fog thickened, visibility faded, and the laughter echoed around them in an endless loop. Lydia felt the darkness close in. Every breath felt heavier, every moment a slip toward the abyss, and just as desperation clawed at her mind, a single flash of light shimmered ahead. A beacon of hope or a cruel illusion? Only one way to find out. Could it be salvation, or was it merely leading them deeper into the hollow? With resolve, they stumbled toward the glow, not knowing what awaited them beyond the veil of shadows. As they stumbled forward, Lydia's heart raced. The glow pulsed in and out of view, teasing her with promises of safety. "Stay close," she urged, pulling her children against her side. The laughter receded momentarily, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. They emerged into the clearing and froze. The light was bright, almost blinding, but suffocating in its intensity. It warped the air, sending strange ripples through the mist. Before them stood an enormous tree, ancient and gnarled, roots twisting like the fingers of a hand reaching for salvation. Its trunk was marked with deep grooves, almost like veins, and Lydia felt an unsettling pull toward it. "Mom, what is it?" Sam asked, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. I don't know." Lydia's throat tightened. The tree emanated a warmth that felt alien in the cold night. A whisper floated through the air, sultry and beguiling, "Come closer, we are waiting." But as she inched forward, the shadows writhed again at the edge of the clearing, hissing like serpents. They were back, clawing and snarling, an awful tapestry of darkness that rippled with malevolence. "Join us," echoed through the air, a chorus of tormented voices blending into an unintelligible cacophony. "Don't listen to them," Lydia shouted defiantly, forcing her feet to move. "We can't stay here." She turned to the tree, panic clawing at her, urging her to choose. The light flickered, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces that twisted in despair and madness, trapped within the bark. It was a chilling reminder that both salvation and damnation lurked within the heart of this darkness. "Mom, I don't want to go," Zoe whimpered, tugging at Lydia's sleeve. Her little body trembled, and Lydia felt the terror rise in her gut like a sudden storm. "Just a bit further, I can't let them take you." Lydia pressed forward, her feet heavy as though the ground itself tried to keep her from moving. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, their forms shooting toward them like vicious spears. Cold hands grasped at her ankles, pulling her back. Lydia cried out, desperately flailing at the darkness. "Let us go!" She screamed, pulling her children tight against her, but the whispers grew sharper, more desperate. Join us," they clawed at her mind, constructing webs of doubt and despair. What if fighting against it was futile? What if there was no escape? "Mom!" Sam's voice pierced through her spiraling thoughts. "Don't let them take us." In a surge of desperation, Lydia lunged toward the tree. The sudden movement jolted the shadows, drawing their attention. They hissed angrily, giving Lydia a fleeting moment. With a trembling hand, she reached for the trunk. The moment her fingers brushed against the rough bark, a wave of warmth flooded through her, echoing memories of love and safety. Moments of laughter wrapped in her arms. Ordinariness in the midst of chaos. But then, horror filled her vision, faces shifted in the tree's texture, lost souls, drawn into its embrace, eyes wide with terror. "Help us," they moaned, the chorus unwavering. "Mommy, it's wrong," Zoe cried, pulling away. Lydia's breath quickened. What had she done? This tree, this light, it looked like hope but felt like a trap. It was all a ruse, a design crafted to ensnare those desperate enough to seek refuge. She jerked her hand back as the shadows lunged again, and terror wrapped around her heart, squeezing tightly. The clearing darkened as their laughter swelled once more, now different. It was manic, a desperate call for fresh souls. "Run! Back the way we came!" Lydia roared, panic mingling with determination. She grabbed Sam and Zoe, shoving them toward the only option they had left. Driven by primal fear, they sprinted back into the encroaching dark, but the shadows clawed at them, hungry. The path was twisted, forked like a serpent, spinning their sense of direction. "Which way?" Sam gasped, his voice breaking. In front of them, a figure appeared, half-formed in the swirling dark. Human-like, but twisted, with hollow eyes that glowed. "You cannot escape," it taunted. Lydia felt her resolve falter. "We have to go," she urged, rooting her feet back into determination, but in that moment, the figure stepped out with a captivating smile, beckoning her to stop. "Why fight the inevitable?" it whispered, the voice slithering in her ear. "Join us." What choice did she really have? The depths of the dark threatened to swallow them whole. With a frantic pulse in her chest, Lydia knew the next seconds could decide their fate. Would they succumb to the darkness or defy it? Just off the path, something powerful stirred as the shadows thickened, closing in. There was more to this than she realized, and it was eager to reveal the worst of itself, what awaited them in the depths, when bravery was the only option left. As they rushed deeper into the black, a new question loomed: what sacrifices would they be forced to make to survive? The shadows surged, a dark smog closing in on all sides. Lydia's breath quickened, each inhale thick with dread. "We need to keep moving," she urged, her voice trembling as the twisted figure loomed closer, its hollow eyes seeming to pull her in. "Which way?" Sam shouted, panic creeping into his voice. The echoes of their pursuers filled the air, a cacophony of growls and whispers that twisted around them, making it impossible to hear anything clearly. She forced her gaze away from the grinning face, sealing her resolve. This way. Lydia pointed down a narrow path, its edges blurred by swirling fog. Gathering her children, she sprinted ahead, the cold slapping against her skin like a warning, but the path was treacherous. Roots erupted from the ground like jagged teeth, threatening to trip them at every step. Lydia felt the tug of shadowy tendrils brushing against her ankles, trying to pull her down into the earth. "Don't look back!" she screamed, adrenaline pushing them forward. With every stride, the laughter grew louder, mocking, dancing behind them, just out of reach like an itch beneath the skin. Lydia felt the heaviness of dread crawl over her shoulders, wrapping around her like a vice. "Stay with me." Every ounce of her being willed them onward. As they stumbled forward, the path twisted again, almost serpentine. Lydia's heart sank when she realized they were heading in circles. The dark was conspiring against them. "Mom, I can't keep running," Zoe gasped, her little voice choking on fear. "No. We can't stop. Not yet." Something inside Lydia screamed for her to push harder, but her body betrayed her. She felt the exhaustion pooling at her feet, drawing her down like an anchor. Then the whispering returned, sharper now, clawing at her mind. "Why so afraid?" it coaxed, a sinister delight weaving through the words. "Just give in. There's no shame in rest." Lydia's pulse quickened. "We won tea," she snarled, defiance sparking in her core. "You don't own us." But the figure lingered at the edge of her vision, a shadow flickering from one tree to another, beckoning her back, promising solace in surrender. "Join us," it hissed, its voice a slithering sensation against her skin. "You'll never be alone again." With a surge of bitter strength, Lydia gripped her children's hands tighter. "Don't listen." She pulled them down another path, heart racing, the rhythm of terror thrumming in her chest. She had to keep them safe. They had to break free. The trail dipped, sending them tumbling into a hollow. Echoes bounced off the walls, mocking laughter ricocheting in her ears. They landed in a heap, breathless and dazed. Just as Lydia pushed herself up, a shadow tore through the air, solidifying into a grotesque face, twisted and bleached of all color. It grinned with rows of teeth like spikes, hungry for their fear. "Found you," it rasped, stretching black fingers toward them. "Run!" Lydia's roar cut through her fear like a blade. She grabbed both kids, pulling them up again, heart racing as she scanned for an exit. Panic bubbled in her throat. Time was running out. Ahead, the gloom shifted, a luminous flicker beckoning her down a new path. Lydia squinted, eyeing the glint like a distant promise of hope. "That way!" she shouted, nearly dragging her children along as they sped toward the light. But as they inched closer, the flicker transformed. It twisted, changing into a swirling vortex of darkness, hungry and fierce. Breath caught in her throat, Lydia froze. "What is that?" Sam whispered, wide-eyed and shaking. Lydia shook her head, feeling the weight of despair. She could see fleeting faces around the edges of the swirling void, lost souls, reaching out in silent agony. A chilling thought crossed her mind: we might not escape unless we face it. Before she could catch her breath, a blast of wind swept over them, tugging at Zoe's hair. With a loud whoosh, the shadows surged again, forcing them toward the vortex that pulsed ominously, its whispers amplifying, becoming an overwhelming roar. "Mom, please!" Zoe whimpered, fear spilling from her eyes. "Hold on tight!" Lydia shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. The roar deafened her, drowning out her thoughts. With one last look at the light, she surged forward, clenching her children, knowing this moment might decide everything. "Whatever it takes, don't let go." As the vortex drew near, time felt suspended, the air thick with anticipation. What lay on the other side of that swirling darkness? Would they find freedom, or would they become another whisper in the night? And in that desperate moment, Lydia understood, they had one final choice to make. The darkness consumed them, rushing like a river toward a waterfall. Lydia felt the pull of the vortex, its icy breath wrapping around her like an urgent embrace, desperately urging her to surrender. "Mom!" Zoe's voice shattered through the chaos, sharp and urgent. Lydia squeezed her daughter's hand, grounding herself in the trembling warmth. With a surge, they crossed the threshold into the abyss, light blinked, distorted and fleeting, before they tumbled into a realm where shadows cavorted freely. They landed on cold, uneven ground that felt alive beneath them. Lydia's heart pounded, a frantic metronome against the silence that enveloped this space. No laughter followed. Only an unsettling stillness crept around them, making her skin prickle. "Where are we?" Sam's voice trembled, echoing against the oppressive gloom. "I don't know," Lydia admitted, casting her eyes around. The darkness seemed to pulse, swirling like smoke with whispers trapped inside. She pulled her children closer, the thrum of dread rising in her throat. "We'll find a way back." But the air was thick with something suffocating, an empty promise of despair. Just then, that familiar mocking tone broke through the veil of silence. "Welcome, welcome to the place of voices." The laughter, false and chilling, dripped from the shadows, wrapping around her like a serpent. "Shut up!" Lydia shouted, anger flaring in her chest. "You can't have us." "Oh, but we already do," the voice slithered through the air, curling around them. "You're here, trapped in the folds of fear, just like the others." Lydia felt nauseous. What others? Those who gave up, those who thought they could escape. The whisper turned sinister, the shadows coiling closer, flickering in and out. Lydia's pulse raced as she remembered the faces at the edge of the vortex, the lost souls, reaching, pleading. They are forever bound by their regrets, their fears. You can be, too. No. Sam's small voice cut through the chaos. We're not like them. The shadows thrashed with fury, dark tendrils clawing at the air. Your fear makes you weak. They hissed, with a fierce determination blossoming inside her. Lydia stepped forward. No. You're wrong. Each word echoed with an intensity she had never felt before. You don't control us. The shadows recoiled as if struck, hesitating at her defiance. For a moment, in the throes of terror, she felt a flicker of light inside, a growing resistance, a thread of hope running through her veins. "Mom, look!" Zoe pointed, her voice quivering. Ahead, deeper in the void, a shape was forming. It was faint, but it pulsed with an ethereal glow, almost inviting. Could it be a way out? "Stay close," Lydia instructed, heart racing as they edged toward the light. Every step felt like a battle against invisible chains trying to pull them back. Just as they reached the warmth of the glow, the shadows howled, a furious crescendo that shattered the stillness. You may escape us, but you will never be free. Lydia's heart stopped. The world around them shook, and the light flickered with uncertainty. They couldn't turn back. Taking a deep breath, Lydia clasped her children's hands tightly. Together, she shouted. We can do this. As they surged forward, a shrill shriek echoed, the shadows writhing and twisting in rage. An unavoidable thought trailed behind Lydia like a shadow of its own. Was there a cost for their escape? Then the light engulfed them, blinding and complete. At the edge of their vision, the shadows split and writhed in anguish, desperate to keep them. What is this place? Sam questioned, squinting against the illumination. Where are we going? Zoe's small voice trembled again, but Lydia couldn't answer. Fear clawed at her throat. The light felt both liberating and perilous. As they passed through the radiant embrace, an overwhelming pulse surged, like a heartbeat beating against their souls, and Lydia realized they weren't just escaping the shadows, they were stepping into something new, something possibly more dangerous. What now? Sam whispered as they broke through, the light dimming behind them. Revealing a landscape drenched in unsettling beauty, they stood at the edge of a sprawling town nestled under a sickly green sky, houses lined up like sentinels watching. But this place felt heavy, a weight of secrets hanging in the air. And in that moment, Lydia understood the truth: they had traded one horror for another. The road ahead shimmered with the promise of further terrors hidden in the corners. "What do we do?" Zoe asked, her eyes wide as they took in the sight. Lydia's heart raced. She was terrified but determined. "We survive. We find out what's waiting for us." As shadows crept from the edges of the town, her words hung in the air, a chilling echo of the choice they had yet to make. The thin line between salvation and horror quivered precariously before them. What awaited them in this picturesque yet menacing town? The silence of the town stretched and twisted, like thick fog wrapping around their senses. Lydia felt a chill creep up her spine as she took a step forward, the gravel crunching under her feet like the brittle bones of long-forgotten whispers. Each house loomed with a grotesque personality, their windows dark and empty, resembling hollow eyes that observed their every move. "Stay close," she murmured, trying to mask the fear that edged into her voice. The path split at the center of what felt like a long-abandoned square. A crooked street lamp flickered, struggling against the inky sky, sending strange shadows dancing upon cracked pavement. Sam gripped Zoe's hand tightly, glancing at the tall, withered trees that surrounded them, their twisted branches clawing at the air, as if trying to pull the children back. "Do you hear that?" he whispered anxiously. Hushed murmurs floated on the wind, too soft to decipher yet too clear to dismiss. It was as if the very essence of the town itself breathed memories of sorrow, desperation, and everything in between. Lydia's heart thudded with each pulse of the whispers, fear and curiosity battling for dominance within her. Then, ahead, she noticed a figure, a woman standing under the flickering light, her entire being draped in shadows. The woman's silhouette was stark against the dimness of the street, an anchor in the pull of the unknown. A scream started to bubble up in Lydia's throat, but the woman raised her hand, halting any inclination to flee. "Welcome, strangers," she said, her voice smooth yet unsettling, like silk stretched over broken glass. The children shrank behind Lydia, clinging to her waist. "Who are you?" Lydia asked, voice quivering. "I keep the stories, the memories of this town," the woman replied. "But they come with a price." "What do you mean?" Sam piped up, his youthful bravado thinly veiling his fear. The woman's smile was disquieting, revealing too many teeth for comfort. "Every inhabitant here has a role, a duty. To forget is to perish. To remember is to become one with it. You have entered the realm of choices." The last word hung heavy, dripping with a bitter sweetness. Lydia felt the ground beneath her pulse an echo of unassuming dread. "But what do we have to do?" Zoe whispered, her small voice quaking. "Only what your hearts desire," the woman cooed. "Your fears, your hopes, they shape the reality around you. Each choice has consequences. This isn't about making wishes. We just want to leave." Lydia snapped, frustration overpowering her instinct to flee. "Leave?" The woman laughed, a sound that took on a life of its own, bouncing off the walls of the sinister houses. "You can't leave without understanding what binds you here. Souls become forfeit, locked in regret." A dread crawled up Lydia's throat. She recalled the faces flickering at the edge of the void. The trapped souls weren't free, they were tethered by their own choices, their desires turned against them. "What do we need to do?" Lydia demanded, her pulse quickening. "We need to leave now." The woman tilted her head, shadows shifting almost with sentience. "You must confront your fears, acknowledge what you wish to forget, then the path may reveal itself." As the words twisted around their thoughts, the shadows seemed to deepen, thickening around the town, insulating it from the outside world. "What if we refuse?" Sam challenged, a flicker of resolve sparking in him despite the palpable terror. The woman leaned closer, her breath cold and biting. "Then you will remain forever lost in the stories you choose to ignore." A chill engulfed Lydia as she contemplated the implications, understanding the bare truth behind the woman's words. They were entangled, a web of choices unspooled into their lives. What now, Mom? Zoe looked up, her wide eyes filled with hope and fear. Lydia took a deep breath, sensing the weight of the stories around her, the weight of her family. We face this together. We find out what we've been running from, then we push past it. As they stepped closer to the woman, a low rumble echoed from the depths of the town, a low warning made by things unseen. A sliver of darkness peeled away, revealing an entrance to a narrow alley lined with doorways. Each door throbbed as if harboring a secret, a buried fear waiting to be unleashed. Lydia hesitated. What lies within? Only you can decide, the woman said softly, and a shiver ran through Lydia, an instinctual dread coupling with the knowledge that the journey to confront, no, to accept what they had left behind was just beginning. What awaited them behind those doors? They couldn't turn back. Lydia felt the tension swell in the air, a thick tangible dread wrapping around them like a vice. Each door loomed like a yawning abyss, whispering secrets that begged to be uncovered. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, a frantic counterpoint to the heavy silence that enveloped them. Which one do we choose? Zoe's voice trembled, barely above a whisper, as she turned her gaze from door to door, each one a dark promise of what lay within. They're all the same, Lydia replied, though doubt threaded through her words. It's not the door that matters, it's what's behind it. The woman's eyes sparkled unnaturally in the dim light, an unsettling gleam of something ancient and knowing. Choose wisely, dear ones. Once a door is opened, there's no going back. Lydia's breath quickened. What was she supposed to do? Could she really confront the shadows of their past? In a moment of strange clarity, she felt herself drawn to the door at the end of the alley, a door twisted with vines, like the very fears that ensnared her heart. We'll go there, she declared, surprising herself with the surge of conviction. Sam hesitated. But what if it's worse? Then we're in it together. Lydia gripped Zoe's hand tighter. We have to find a way. This isn't just about us. It's about breaking the cycle. The woman stepped aside, her grin widening. Oh, how brave. But bravery often comes at a price. Ignoring the warning, Lydia stepped forward. Her heart hammered as she turned the weathered knob and pushed the door open. What flooded out wasn't darkness. It was a heavy stench of rot and decay, like a forgotten place long lost to time. They stumbled into a room that looked like a shrine to forgotten moments, walls covered in old photographs, each face frozen in a moment of fear or despair, their mouths eternally open in silent screams. Mom, look! Zoe pointed shakily. That looks like us. Lydia's blood ran cold. Among the frantic faces, one resembled them, especially Zoe. Eyes wide with terror, her long hair waving like seaweed in dark waters. Shadows curled around the edges of each photograph, as if reaching out, begging for release. What is this place? Sam demanded, his voice rising in panic as he backed away. It's where stories are kept, where fears are manifest, the woman murmured from behind them, seemingly absorbed in the atmosphere. This is a glimpse, a reflection of what once was and what might be. You are drawn here for a reason. No. Lydia shouted, thrusting herself between her children and the wall of faces. We're not these lives. We can change. We won't end up like them. But as she shouted, the photographs began to pulsate and shift, faces warping into grotesque expressions of agony. The whispers returned, rising in volume, a cacophony of despair. Each voice clawed at Lydia's sanity, dragging her into their sorrow. You left us, you can't forget, they cried, their pleas licking at the edges of her resolve as the room darkened, shadows crawling closer, stretching toward her, eager to consume. Zoe burst into tears, clinging to Sam, who looked equally horrified. Mom! Make it stop! Lydia's heart raced. I want to let you take my children. She turned back to the woman, who stood unfazed, eyes sparkling with sinister delight. What do we have to do to break this? Only face what you fear most, she whispered. The stories you run from are the keys to your freedom. Lydia's mind raced. What did she fear? Losing her children? Not being able to protect them? The sheer thought of it gripped her like iron. Suddenly, the air crackled, and a chilling voice echoed through the room. Choose to confront your fears or surrender to them. No. Lydia shouted, drowning the whispers in her own panic. She could feel the walls tightening around her, shadows congealing into a force not just waiting but wanting. Trembling, Lydia drew Zoe and Sam close, shielding them as echoes of forgotten lives surged forward. Face it together. She urged, her voice steadying despite the chaos, but as she felt the shadows brush against her skin, she realized confronting fears might come with a cost they weren't prepared to pay, and behind that ancient promise lay a truth even darker. What would they have to sacrifice to emerge whole? As they struggled with that uncertainty, the temperature dropped sharply, and darkness thickened, whispering of choices left unmade and consequences yet to come. The room around them began to spin, each photograph shifting like a kaleidoscope of their own fears. Suddenly, doors began to slam shut, blocking their only exit, leaving them wrestling with the shadows that threatened to engulf everything they were. In that spiraling chaos, Lydia could barely hold on to her sanity. But somewhere in that turmoil, she heard a voice that carried a chilling familiarity. Face the truth, Lydia, before it devours you. What truth? What lay beyond the next door? The whispers grew louder, a haunting symphony of past regrets and unspoken fears. Lydia felt the weight of the shadows pressing in around them, laced with the memories of lives that had slipped into despair. Mom, it's too much. Zoe's voice was barely a whisper, trembling as her grip tightened on Lydia's arm. Sam stood frozen, eyes darting between the shifting photographs and the encroaching darkness. The woman's gaze was like a serpent's, both captivating and deadly. You must unlock the truth. Only then will the memories release their grip. Lydia took a step back, heart racing. What truth? What do we need to know? Your past is your prison. Only by confronting it can you find your freedom. As the words hung heavy in the thickening air, one photo caught Lydia's eye. It was an image of her much younger, smiling at a birthday party surrounded by faces she loved. But one face stood out. Her brother, Daniel, a shadow hanging over their childhood like a storm cloud. He had vanished years ago, swallowed by secrets that had torn their family apart. Daniel, she breathed, realization dawning like a slow thunderclap. Was this the fear she had hidden deep within? The guilt of not knowing what had happened. A shift in the atmosphere twisted through her, and suddenly shapes began to emerge from the shadows, figures without bodies. They writhing closer, drawn by the gravity of her unspoken fears. You left him, the shadows taunted, their voices overlapping like a chorus of echoes. You let him vanish, you didn't save him. Stop. Lydia screamed, but the words felt small, drowning in a tide of anguish. She could feel the heat of bile crawling up her throat, suffocating her. No, it was an accident. I tried. Lydia's mind was racing as tears streamed down her face. She and Daniel had been inseparable until that fateful day when their childhood innocence shattered into pieces. The woman stepped forward, a glimmer of something shifting in her eyes. Face the choice you made, dear Lydia. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies. Zoe stepped back, horrified. Mom, don't listen to her. We need to get out of here. But Sam didn't move, frozen in the moment of truth. What if we can make sense of this, Mom? The room warped around them, shifting with memories clawing at the edges of their minds. Lydia felt her resolve shatter under the weight of it all. Her anger turned to despair, grief swallowing her whole. Lydia, your fears cannot protect you, the shadows pressed. Confront your truth, or it will consume you in them. The darkness grew thick, the temperature dropping further, freezing her core. She felt the shadows seeking an entry, ready to devour every ounce of her being. Mom! Zoe cried, but Lydia couldn't look away from the swirling remnants of her past. Make a choice, the woman urged. Choose the path of courage, or seal your fate forever. With trembling hands, Lydia stepped forward, heart thundering in her ears. I will not let fear rule my life, she declared, though a crack of doubt lingered in her resolve. Face him, the shadows chanted, a desperate longing mixed with a cruel joy. Face Daniel. The air crackled in response. As she stood on the precipice of her own making, she felt the darkness pulse in time with her heartbeat, daring her to delve deeper. What awaited on the other side? Would it destroy them, or free them? The walls shook around them, torn between past and present, and in that fraught moment, she saw the next door glistening with an intense shimmer. Would she venture through it, or retreat into the safety of silence? But what awaited behind that shimmering door continued to lurk ominously in her mind, echoing the question she dared not ask: what would she find in the shadows of truth? As the final slivers of light began to dissolve, Lydia's breath hitched, each heartbeat a countdown, a terrifying plunge into the unknown. Lydia's trembling heart echoed in her ears as she approached the shimmering door. Behind it lay answers, perhaps the salvation she desperately sought, but also the specter of her greatest fears. She looked at Sam and Zoe, who clung to her like lifelines in the swelling tide of darkness. Sensing their fear reflected in her eyes, she summoned every ounce of courage. Together, she whispered, swallowing the lump in her throat as she turned the knob, its surface warm against her palm. It creaked open, and beyond it sprawled a desolate landscape, a playground, once vibrant, now cloaked in shadows, the laughter of children twisted into hollow echoes. Daniel! She called out instinctively, her voice slicing through the oppressive silence like a beacon. But only her words returned, ricocheting against the stillness, as shadows pressed in, eager to soothe the aching void left in the silence. Inside the playground, memories unfurled, snippets gleaming amidst the darkness. She saw flashes of herself young, carefree, running beside her brother, both of them bursting with laughter. But the joy turned sour as the memories layered over darker ones, shadows creeping in, angry and relentless. Where are you? She breathed, the air heavy with anticipation. Suddenly, a figure emerged, hesitating upon the edge of her vision. Its outline was unclear, but she felt it, his essence woven through the air. Daniel. He wore a familiar smile, one that urged her forward, but it warped into something more sorrowful, something pulling her deeper into despair. Lydia, his voice wove through the fog. You abandoned me. No. She felt the heat prickling at her skin. I tried to save you. I was scared. The figure shifted, shadows clouding his face. Scared of what? A mistake. The truth? The air pulsed with a weight of remembrance. The day everything changed crashed over her like ice water. The accident, the guilt, and the suffocating fear that followed. Lydia's heart twisted painfully, a visceral ache roiling deep within her. I didn't know, I didn't think you didn't think of consequences. His words cut through her defenses, raw and biting. You left me alone with your fear. The shadows merged, swarming, echoing with the anguish of countless lost souls. Lydia dropped to her knees, desperation clawing at her throat. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to lose you. I was just a child. The ground trembled, as if responding to the energy of her regret. Daniel's figure began to dissolve, fading with every word, the sorrow in his eyes mingling with something deeper. Understanding washed over him, luminous and expansive. Then confronted, Lydia. Face your truth. He urged softly. The shadows thickened around her, eager to pull her down into their depths, taunting her with warning of what lay ahead. No. Lydia cried out. I want to let you take us. Open the door. Sam shouted, his small frame quaking. With a surge of determination, she regained her feet. Taking her children's hands tightly, she pushed forward, bypassing the specters of fear that clawed at them. We'll fight together. Zoe squeezed her hand even tighter. I'm scared, Mommy. The shadows began to waver, as if uncertain against her resolve. You're stronger than fear, Lydia whispered, but her voice broke with emotion. We're not going back. Daniel, we will find you. We will set you free. With each hesitant step, the whispers quieted, overshadowed by Lydia's courage. You don't own us. We will not succumb. In that moment, the gnarled fingers of the shadows recoiled, taken aback by the iron will ignited within her, the glowing door ahead pulsed brighter with each declaration. Freedom lies behind it, she urged, her family focused on the glimmer of hope. As Lydia stepped more assuredly, her brother's essence shimmered, transforming into a flicker of light that illuminated their way forward. Lydia. He beamed, warmth radiating from his spirit. You must remember you carry love and strength. Go. Lydia squared her shoulders, pulling Zoe and Sam closer. This is it. Together. Heart pounding, they crossed the threshold of the shimmering door, light enveloping them like a gentle embrace. Lydia felt the shadows recede, their whispers dissipating into nothingness. Blinding light faded, revealing a bright new landscape. They stood in a sunlit clearing, vibrant with flora, laughter echoing through the air. Lydia's breath hitched, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. Glistening leaves danced under the sunlight, enveloping them in warmth and a gentle promise of hope. Did we make it? Sam's voice trembled, filled with wonder. Yes, she whispered, a smile breaking through the tears. Zoe stared up at her mother, the weight of fear lifted from her small shoulders. Can we stay here, Mommy? Always, Lydia replied, feeling the depth of love swell in her heart. This is our beginning, not an ending. We will live, we will laugh, no more fear to bind us. As they embraced, the shadows of the past slipped further into nothingness, echoes fading like forgotten whispers. Oakwood remained, but it couldn't reach them here. Together, they would carve a new story, a brighter one that honored their struggles but freed them from their binds, filled with a newfound conviction, as well as love and courage. Lydia felt her heart lift, believing that they could face uncertainty together, no longer lost but unshakably united, and as the sun began to set, casting golden rays like blessings overhead, Lydia understood they had found freedom, not merely from fear, but toward an endless horizon. But listen up. Here's the deal: subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this story wraps up. It's time for the true fans to rally together. Let's go.